our preview for today. It's the San Francisco 49ers, one of the more intriguing teams of this offseason. You and I have yet to talk about just how we view the overall perception, kind of compared to reality here, where you have a quarterback in Brock Purdy who rises to prominence last year, then gets injured. And with all the amazing parts on that team, the big question is quarterback. And so with a team that now comes back, favored to win the NFC West, what do you make of this Niners team entering 23?
I love this team. I think they're one of really 4 to 5 teams that can win the Super Bowl. I think them in Philadelphia are head and shoulders above everybody in the NFC. I know people point to the fact that Brock Purdy's coming off the UCL surgery and how much of an impact could that have on him in terms of what he's able to do. But to me, Ben, when you look at this Niners team, they are the deepest team in football from a talent standpoint, minus the quarterback position. Nobody else comes close to them. Just real quickly, just looking at the roster, okay, you've got Kittle at tight end. He's if you go by the ESPN Plus rankings on executives, coaches, and scouts where they rank these guys, he's rated number 2. Trent Williams rated number 1. Christian McCaffrey at running back rated number 1. Rated number 2 behind Nick Chubb. Nick Bosa 1. Fred Warner number 1. This team is loaded. I mean, this team is unbelievable. I haven't even mentioned arguably the best weapon in football, which is Deebo Samuel, whether you put him in the tailback position, the wide receiver position. Brandon Ayuk is criminally underrated in terms of what he's able to do. Jawan Jennings has been a nice receiver for this team. I absolutely love this team. And, that didn't even mention, not to mention Elijah Mitchell as a backup. He's a great running back as well. To me, they could put about 20 guys at quarterback in San Francisco, and this team still got a chance to win the Super Bowl.
Everything to me, every box is checked. Even the quarterback in Brock Purdy, I don't have the same concerns that other people do, because in that system, with as much pre-snap motion that Kyle Shanahan uses, if I still been making the argument, and I went down, I bet heavily on the Niners in that NFC Championship game, lost to Philadelphia, but Brock Purdy gets rid of the ball a half second earlier on that first drive of the game. I still believe San Francisco goes out and beats Philadelphia. Of course, the whole tenor changes when Purdy gets knocked out. Game flips. Niners didn't have a quarterback. But I think the one concern you would probably have is offensive line, right? Where with Trent Williams being back at left tackle, the rest of that group has been somewhat untested. And like PFF ranks them 18th best offensive line in football. It's probably accurate to say about a mid-tier group, where the rest I view as elite across their positions.
I'll tell you why I don't put that much stock in PFF's grades. Some of the players and the way they rank them, and then you see some of the contracts that they get signed in the offseason, obviously they're looking at something different than general managers, scouts, and teams. So for me, I kind of throw it out the window. You're right. If you're going to point to a little bit of a weakness, it might be there. Offensive line is probably their second biggest issue. Cornerback, they lose Jimmy Ward. I think he went to Houston as a free agent. I think he wound up there. But overall, one other thing I didn't mention, they add in Javon Hargrave. Now, I'm not necessarily ready to sign off with you in the NFC Championship game where if Purdy doesn't get hurt, that the Niners win.
I get it's a bit of an overstatement.
No, it's not necessarily. I think they're both very competitive. I think they're head and shoulders above everyone else. But to me, where San Francisco is slightly better now than the Philadelphia Eagles is, not only do you get a top defensive tackle in a Hargrave, but you get someone that you take away a centerpiece from the Philadelphia Eagles, your biggest competition at this point in time. And then you get a healthy Eric Armstead. You've got Drake Jackson on that defensive front. Look, with McCaffrey's ability to run the ball, and I love the fact that Shanahan's one of these smart coaches that runs the ball constantly, this team is right there. I mean, let's be real here. They were 60 minutes away from winning the Super Bowl. And against Kansas City a couple of years ago, I mean, they're a big-time one pass. Exactly. This team is right there. John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan have done a tremendous job of assembling the team that they have. I think they've got a great shot. I'm a little bit surprised by these odds we're looking at DraftKings right now. Niners are $4.25 to win the NFC. I love these odds on this team. Everyone wants to talk Seattle. Ben, if you break down the 3 times they played the Hawks last year, the first half in the playoff game, They had a lead. It was a minor lead against the 49ers. The Seahawks did. It was their best half of football out of the 6 halves of football that they played against the 49ers. San Francisco destroyed them in the second half. Seattle gets a late garbage touchdown. They dominated the other 4 halves when they played them in the regular season. Seattle's not on the 49ers level. People, please continue to bet the Seahawks all day, every day. Don't stop. I mean, to me, I find it to be absurd. Yes, the receiving core is good. Fine, if you like Geno Smith. Geno Smith was terrible for about the first 7 years of his career. But San Francisco is just a different level team compared to the Seattle Seahawks. This team right now, with adding Hargrave, with Nick Bosa going to get a big-time contract, this team, to me, I would make them the favorite to win the NFC despite the uncertainty at quarterback. Here's the other thing. Trey Lance is a guy that could potentially give you something that you don't expect. Anything you get out of him is a bonus. If he's in short yardage situations to be able to run the ball with McCaffrey back there, with Deebo Samuel, you imagine you line that up there with Lance, Deebo, and Christian McCaffrey? Forget about it.
Yeah. Well, it's such a good point because the general consensus in the way we process Trey Lance, because of how high he was drafted, is, well, if he's not a starting quarterback on your franchise, then it's a total busted and a wasted pick. Whereas, isn't this the one team where, knowing the uncertainties about Lance, and we have no idea still as far as the recovery from his injury is going, even if the reports are positive, isn't he the perfect guy? Like, isn't San Francisco the perfect team for a guy like Lance, who is still limited in his growth as a quarterback, but can still contribute in a lot of different ways than he could have, say, he was thrown in on the Detroit Lions this year or the Atlanta Falcons?
Excellent point. When you look at McCaffrey, you look at Deebo Samuel, whether he's lined up in the backfield or on the perimeter, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle. George Kittle's got to be the best run-after-catch player in the NFL after contact. Travis Kelce's probably as good as anybody in terms of catching the ball and getting upfield, but Kittle is a guy you have a hard time bringing down, and he's a much better inline blocker than Travis Kelce is. To me, you're absolutely right. It's a much better situation and circumstance for him to be in than some other team, just simply based on the talent that they have around him. Now, I will tell you one under-the-radar loss that they have for this team is Robbie Gould. Robbie Gould is an incredibly accurate kicker. The leg strength was no longer there outside of the 45-yard line, but I still think Robbie Gould is a kicker that was extremely beneficial for this team when you look at when you needed a field goal in a pressure situation. Is one of those been there, done that for a long time. I mean, this team gets to play the Rams twice, the Cardinals twice. They do play Minnesota, which won't be easy, but again, that's a home game. This is a team right now, to me, that's in a great position. They should have a fantastic season. The game December 3rd at the Link in Philadelphia will be crucial to potentially seeing which team gets home field advantage. Season win total over under 10.5 at -145. I promise you one thing. They will not have a loss in the schedule this year the way they did against the Bears in week 1. This team is far better. The season win total is at 10.5. So somebody out there thinks the Niners are going 10-7.
7 losses. Yeah.
I mean, who made that total? Mike Nolan? Somebody who was fired by the Niners? Jim Harbaugh? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Tell me why the San Francisco 49ers, who talent-wise, if you are any GM, you say, take away Patrick Mahomes, just give me the Niners roster. They have the best roster in football minus the quarterback position. I've said that many times. It's not even close. They have 6 to 7 players that are in the top 2 or 3 in the NFL at their respective positions.
I was expecting you to go with a Jim Tom Sula reference, but you let me down. That's okay. That Mike Nolan, not a bad. Any guy who wears a suit on the sideline.
Hey, don't make fun of him. I would probably show up in a suit.
I mean, I didn't hate it at the time either. If you're talking about concerns for San Francisco, mention some of the issues with durability on the offensive line. It's a team that, in general, for whatever reason, Amal, under head coach Kyle Shanahan, has had a lot of injuries. They've been a very banged up team. And they have a lot of weird scheduling spots this year. They have 3 different weeks where their opponent is coming off a bye, including 1 week where they're playing on a short week off Monday Night Football. I believe it's that Cincinnati game where the Bengals are off a bye. So I don't know how much stock you put into those short weeks, and just and in general, not the specific spot, but just how it is extrapolated over the course of a regular season, and how, if at all, based on the history there with some injuries, based on some of those tough scheduling spots, it would worry you at any point as far as that win total goes.
Well, look, if you lose to the Bengals at home, it's not the worst thing in the world. Number one, Cincinnati is one of those teams that I would consider for the Super Bowl. The other thing is, and a lot of people at VSiN, I think 75% of the people in the guide picked the Bengals to win the Super Bowl. Great team this year. However, to me, they're non-conference, so it doesn't really hurt you big picture-wise. Yes, you never want to have a loss, but overall, when you look at this thing, they've got to win that game against the Eagles. They've got the Seahawks at home in late December. They do play in Seattle earlier in the year. I'm just trying to see the exact date in which they play the Seahawks. Actually, they play twice in 3 weeks. November 23rd they play on Thanksgiving night up in Seattle. So that'll be a raucous crowd. But they've got a 3-week stretch where if they beat the Hawks, beat the Eagles, and here's the advantage. Remember, they play on Thanksgiving, and then they'll have an additional 3 days before they play the Eagles in Philadelphia. So I like where this team is at. They've got a great opportunity this year. This team, to me, is going to be somewhere in that 13 to 14 win range.
And it's one of those things where, because so much of the focus, and you think about national narrative, is on the quarterback, how important that position is to a team. I believe, and we agree on this point, Amal, that because of that, the strength of the rest of that roster does not get talked about enough. And as a result, in the betting market, it's why you see a win total like a 10.5 out there. That probably should be a flat 11, if we're being honest. 10.5 right now, -145 on that over.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.